decolonization gains momentum. African nations reclaim cultural identity and autonomy amid colonial legacies. Intensifying poverty fight. Africa focuses on education and healthcare to uplift marginalized communities. Food security at risk. Climate change threatens global food systems, urging sustainable agriculture. Job creation for Kenya's youth. Kenya targets sustainable jobs through green tech and vocational training.
Audio Jungle.
Trusting you are having a fantastic evening and are continuing to enjoy it. Welcome to Frontline Focus. I'm your host Eunice Afia, and here we bring stories that drive insights and bring changes through the voices of the people.
Audio Jungle.
Bringing you insightful stories from Kenya and across the globe. You can join our conversations on our social media handles. On Facebook, you'll find us at Nafsi TV Newsroom, while on Twitter, you'll find us at Nafsi Newsreel with the hashtag Newsreel right now. Frontline Focus begins right now. Our top story highlights the decolonization movement across Africa, with a special focus on Kenya's ongoing efforts to reclaim cultural identities and political autonomy. As countries reflect on their colonial histories, they are redefining governance systems to align with the people's values and aspirations. Join us on our social media to share your thoughts on this critical movement. Let's dive into Kenya's journey and learn from the experiences of other African nations.
Kenya is undergoing a transformative journey to reclaim its cultural identity and establish governance that reflects the values and needs of its people. The decolonization process focuses on restoring indigenous knowledge and history, while addressing the challenges of colonial legacies that still affect the country today. Following Kenya's independence in 1963, the country has made significant strides in decolonizing its institutions. One of the most prominent changes has been in the education sector, where local history and indigenous knowledge are being integrated into school curriculums. These reforms aim to foster national pride and cultivate a deeper understanding of the country's cultural heritage.
Culture is a way of life. It is the beautiful tapestry we artistically paint on our diverse Kenyan canvas. The color we repeat mostly is the color of love. The Bible tells us, love your neighbor as you love yourself. The Quran also emphasizes that humans should treat each other with honor, respect, and dignity. And that is exactly what our cultures teach us.
Education reforms plays a key role in the decolonization movement, as schools now emphasize the importance of preserving cultural traditions and teaching the history of Kenya from an African perspective. Kenya is not alone in this journey. Countries like South Africa and Ghana have successfully pushed forward decolonization, reclaiming cultural identity while focusing on economic independence. These nations have made significant strides in empowering their communities by embracing indigenous knowledge and practices, setting a powerful example for Kenya.
I wear dress, always I want to wear beast because it's African tradition. So I have to wear it so that to show that I'm African. Yeah.
Made from glass and painted, powdered or chiseled, Ghanaian beads have been used in traditional practices for centuries.
In the olden days, they used bead for special occasions. We have bead for funeral, we have bead for puberty rites, we have bead for festivals. But now, because of the modern life, the type of clothes that you wear, and you see the matching bead. You see I wear black and white, and I have a necklace also goes that. you see the type of bee that will matches your dress.
In South Africa, efforts to embrace indigenous languages and heritage have been key to fostering a unified national identity.
So let's just take a look at the theme, celebrating Africa's languages, inheritance and technology for innovation in the knowledge economy. So as you understand it, please unpack this theme for us.
Thank you, Sakina. I think one of the things that I interpreted from the theme was the fact that we have quite an extensive literary heritage in South Africa, but at the same time, we also have the potential to build a new type of heritage using our own languages. So we need to be writing more, producing more content online, and creating knowledge economies using our own languages. So we will be discussing and sort of tying it in terms of exploring what opportunities exist for African languages throughout the African diaspora, as well as, in the digital spaces that we occupy.
These are powerful models that Kenya can adopt in its own pursuit of local cultural and economic independence. The path toward full decolonization is long, but with the ongoing efforts of communities and advocates, Kenya is slowly but surely embracing its heritage while forging a new future. Gordon Odwor reporting for NAFC TV.
We are joined by our correspondent Gordon Odwor, who will share more on this insightful topic. Karibu sana Gordon. How is education being used in this effort of decolonization?
Kenyans' decolonization go beyond political independence. It's about reclaiming cultural identity and ensuring governance reflects local values. This includes integrating indigenous knowledge into education and restructuring governance to empower local communities. The focus is on reviving indigenous knowledge and teaching Kenyans history. Schools are now incorporating African-centered curricula, promoting pride in the country's heritage and shifting away from colonial narratives.
What about governance? Any changes there?
Kenya is decentralizing power to local communities. This move aims to reduce the colonial era centralization and also to ensure that local leaders and communities have more control over decision making.
What are the biggest challenges?
Economic dependency remains a major issue as Kenya still relies on foreign aid. Also, the socio-economic inequalities created during colonial rule persist, especially between the urban and rural areas.
Very insightful. What can Kenya learn from these other African nations like South Africa and Ghana?
South Africa and Ghana have worked on cultural reclaiming and economic independence. I think Kenya could benefit from focusing on local industries and reviving indigenous cultures, as both countries have shown it's possible to reduce dependency.
What's next for Kenya?
Kenya is focused on addressing inequalities and empowering local communities. With increased public engagement, the country is on a path toward greater self-sufficiency and also cultural pride.
Thank you so much, Gordon, for that update.
You are welcome, Afia.
Looking into this topic in detail, we have on board an analyst who will shed more light on this area. You're most welcome. Please do introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Dorcas Sambuto. I work at Parliament of Kenya as the Public Communications Officer, and in my work as a public communication person, I've been very much interested in development communication, and especially how governance and legislative policies affect our development.
Welcome once again. We'll go straight to the questions. How can Kenya preserve its traditions while adapting to modern changes?
Well, in the face of globalization, you will discover that we were first colonized by the Western world, and the colonization affected our mind and thinking, where we were told our cultures, our society at large, our governance, our economics, All of it was thought as being uncivilized, demonic, barbaric, and the colonizers taught us to adapt to the Western way of life. So as globalization steps in, we find that most of the time we are forced to adapt to the way of the West. There are legal implications where we now even are forced to adapt laws and rules that even can go against our own cultural values, like being asked to adapt homosexuality, lesbianism, allow our daughters and sons to marry from the same sex, cultures which are against our African culture. Now, as Kenya, we can still manage our own culture and maintain our cultural heritage through our indigenous aspects. For example, we are looking at crafts works that have been there and the work of art that is found in Kenya. We have weaving, pottery, beading, embroidery, basketry, like the Maasai beads and crafts, the Maasai clothing, and the kikois. And we have our own indigenous knowledge in herbal medicine. We have also our culinary skills, where we have our nyama choma, which is very famous, in fact, globally. You'll go to some countries, even in the US, and you'll find some restaurant there serving Kenyan cuisine, and among the things that are loved there is the nyama choma. We have our moki moki, deri, ugali, chapati, and our own indigenous nutritious vegetables. So if we can take this to a notch higher, we can do even our own tourism in it and sell it to the globe. So that if we'll be keeping our culture. We can also keep our culture, maintain it in this globalization by making sure that our children in school are learning our culture, they are sticking to our culture, they are catching something from our cultural practices.
Are there any steps that can be taken to ensure that indigenous knowledge in schools goes beyond just a symbolic gesture?
Yes, we can make our traditional culture inculcated into our children in school if the education program picks it up. Like the one we have now, the CBC program that is trying to make children do some other things that they can do. That program can be made broader to have lessons where children can learn things that are traditionally adapted to us. For example, they can have apprenticeship in herbal medicine. They can learn which herbs are treating what, how are they mixed, how are they harvested. They can learn that. They can also learn our traditional songs from different cultures, the Pokomo songs, the Luhya songs, the Luo songs. They can be able to sing those songs even in their drama clubs. They can also take part in items like storytelling, hadithi njo, where they can tell stories that are traditionally found in our African societies, and they can carry these stories across.
What actions are needed to break from these economic systems that still favor former colonial powers?
We are stuck with the economic situation as it is, where we keep borrowing loans from World Bank, IMF, and those foreign powers. The reason why we are doing all this is because we don't know how to manage our own resources. Because those countries, where are they getting the resources to raise this money? They are raising the money from us, Africa. They are coming to Africa and they are selling us this knowledge. They are selling us the language. They are selling us everything else. And as we keep buying and buying, we need now money to buy. And we have to get money from them to buy also. And the technology, we have our own technology, but we are not developing our technology. We want to buy the Western technology. We want to lean on them for everything, including our food. But the things we can do to cut off from there is just to make sure that we look at our own cultural heritage, improve in our farming techniques, look at our crops that we are growing, be self-sufficient in food, irrigate our land. Then we can't be borrowing anywhere. Then again, we have technology locally. If we see the sample of like the M-Pesa, which even the European world is wondering how we can have a bank on our phone and do everything, all the banking and the buying and the selling and the exchange of finances on our phone. If we can achieve that at this age, then what is stopping us from achieving something more? It means we can always be able to develop and we can raise our own resources to make ourselves sustainable.
Wow. What can be done to address the social and economical problems caused by colonialism, especially in marginalized communities?
For marginalized communities, you realize that when you are set apart from the other world and you are stuck in your own cocoon, you don't really grow, you don't get more knowledge, you don't expand your brain, you are stuck there and you cannot even innovate. But when you see what others are doing, it helps you learn. So these communities need to be opened up. And I can say that Kenya has tried. The government has tried to open up those communities by engaging in by providing a fund they are calling Equalization Fund to make sure that those marginalized areas are opened up. Roads go there, electricity, water, and this money that is given is meant to make them reach the same level as other developed areas of the country. And on the other hand, they can go ahead also into those communities, especially some communities which are nomadic, moving from one place to the other throughout the seasons and to try and find pasture. These communities, we can make sure that the children of those communities access education. Schools can be mobile and they can also access health facilities. They can provide a mobile clinic that goes where they are going with them all over the place and providing those services for them so that they're ensuring that they are not losing out.
In what ways can Kenya embrace leadership styles rooted in indigenous traditions?
Okay, when we look at the modern governance, we have been told democracy is the best form of governance. But we see that democracy for us, when it's just a government of the people, by the people, and it's centralized at one spot, there are some people who can't have an access to it. There's the minor groups, the minorities get left out in that kind of arrangement because it is the multitude who will get the best. And then the minorities, whatever they say, they will be told you have heard your say. So your say is only enough. But the say can't be enough if you are not getting that which you are clamoring for. But now the scenario that Kenya is adopting can help at least mitigate those challenges, where now everybody gets involved. We are looking at our traditional leadership, where we heard from the chiefs, chiefdoms, kingdoms. Then we are giving at least people a say. Like when we are doing the devolution, every county can now sit down and arrange for their own development, look at their own issues, which issues are important to us, what are we focusing on, so that it's not just a global, we are saying we are making roads. Maybe those fellas don't need roads, they need hospitals more than roads. So we can't just say, oh, we are taking people to university. Maybe these people do not need to move from their place to go to a university outside their area. A university can be made there where they can just walk. And then more people can have access to that university. They don't have to look for accommodation in far-flung universities. You see now, so the devolution is helping people to have their own governance in their own areas and make demands on their own leaders to heed to the new requirements of society and to develop the area.
Thank you so much, Madam Dorcas, for that great insight.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Our next segment delves into the urgent issue of poverty in Africa, with a specific focus on Kenya's strategies to combat this pervasive challenge as nations intensify their efforts. Kenya is implementing initiatives aimed at fostering economic growth and social equity. Join the conversation on our social media platforms and share your thoughts.
The poverty of Africa is the glory of some civilizations. Poverty is an industry.
Kenya's ongoing battle against poverty remains a significant challenge, with nearly 39% of the population living below the poverty line. Despite government and organizational efforts, key issues such as high unemployment, particularly among the youth, and inadequate infrastructure continue to hinder progress. At the heart of the fight against poverty is the need for inclusive policies that focus on marginalized populations. Many are calling for more emphasis on entrepreneurship, skills training, and access to education, critical tools for breaking the cycle of poverty.
The issue of poverty, critically speaking, has got no lordship. The issue of corruption has got no lordship. In any case, members of parliament and even presidents who have served this country, to the extent that they have not engaged in implementation of policies that have directly reduced corruption, that have led to spurring of economic development, as long as we have got politicians who have engaged in electoral violence or instigated electoral violence, which in the end affects economic growth and development, all those individuals then are lords of poverty, because those are the individuals who lead to the nosediving of economic activity, who lead to creation of a space within the country that is not favorable to economic development, social cohesion, and even justice.
While challenges persist, there are shining examples from other African nations that Kenya can draw inspiration from. Rwanda, for instance, has successfully implemented community-driven development programs that have significantly improved access to education and created sustainable employment opportunities.
The well-being of our Rwandan children have been always at the heart of our culture, our values. If we really want to have the quality citizen, you need to invest in children.
My name is Carol Muringa Karemera. I'm coming from Rwanda and I'm a director of Isho Art Center. The sustainable development, it's really what we're seeking for our families, for our children, for the next generation when we will leave this earth. So how can we now create a new generation of humans? It's key that we start really early age. Children often imitate us, so they can choose or they duplicate what they're going to do. And the worst, we can also teach them how to look at things more critically and even looking at adults' actions and say this is wrong, how can they do better, and create a dialogue between generations around sustainable development.
These programs highlight potential pathways for Kenya to strengthen its poverty alleviation efforts. The road ahead is challenging, but with the right strategies and collective action, there is hope for a future where poverty in Kenya is not just reduced but eliminated. Stella Soa reporting for Nafsi TV. Looking deeper into this topic, we have on board an analyst again who will shed more light on this crucial topic, the battle against poverty. Welcome. Introduce yourself.
Thank you for hosting me. I'm Vincent Ambeva. I'm an accountant and currently I'm self-employed.
Welcome again. We go into our first question. Why has Kenya struggled to reduce poverty, especially in marginalized communities? And what changes are needed?
Thank you for that question. Poverty has been the biggest downfall in our country. And the major cause is corruption. People who are in high-ranking positions misuse funds for development, whereby funds set for development end up in their personal use instead of development purposes. Another cause is punitive cultural practices, mostly in areas, pastoral areas, whereby you find practices like cattle wrestling, early marriages where girls are forced into marriage when they are still very young. How then do we correct this? The best way to correct is by mass education, to educate people on the benefits of educating the girl child, and also to educate them on the importance of adopting new technologies and new trends instead of sticking to the old and punitive ways of living.
How can poverty reduction efforts be more inclusive for women, disabled people, and rural communities?
Number one is by educating the girl child. By doing so, we empower the girl child to be knowledgeable and then fend for themselves. Another way is by engaging and involving the women and disabled on the decision-making table, whereby they are included in decisions pertaining development of the society. Number 3 is by creating job opportunities to women and also to the disabled groups.
My final question: how does Kenya's systematic inequalities fuel poverty, and what changes are needed?
The biggest inequality is tribalism. Tribalism has literally caused inequality in resource sharing in our country, whereby you find resources are shared according to tribes, thereby empowering some regions and some areas and destabilizing other areas, so hindering the development in some areas.
Thank you so much for taking your time with us.
You're welcome.
Coming up after the break, we'll explore the urgent issue of food security in Kenya, as climate change threatens agricultural productivity, with rising temperatures and erratic weather patterns affecting our crop yields. We need something to be done. Don't miss it. And welcome back. As I had mentioned earlier, our next story addresses the pressing issue of food security in the context of climate change, focusing on Kenya's challenges and initiatives as erratic weather patterns and rising temperatures are threatening our crop yield. The nation grapples with the implications for food success. Join us in our social media pages and engage with us on your thoughts on this. Let's take a look at this together.
Food security in Kenya is becoming an urgent issue, with approximately 30% of the population experiencing food insecurity. This challenge has been exacerbated by the impacts of climate change, including droughts, floods, and unpredictable weather patterns that affect agricultural productivity. The United Nations has called for adaptive strategies to meet Sustainable Development Goal Zero Hunger, stressing the need for sustainable agricultural practices that can withstand the shifting climate despite the ongoing efforts.
In this topic also, the report comes up with a very strong 3 recommendations which we believe are important. And why they are important? Because we observe that countries with the highest level of food insecurity are oftentimes with less access to financing. The 119 low and middle income countries analyzed, around 63% have limited or moderately ability to access to financing. So what we can do to change this pattern and what we can do to improve this? There are 3 recommendations. First is to enhance coordination. We really have a coordination failure. There has been marginal improvements, but we need significant improvements on coordination. Second, donors and other international actors must be more risk tolerant and involved in the risking activity. We need to innovate more in financing.
Experts and advocates are urging for investment in climate-resistant crops and sustainable farming techniques to enhance food access, especially for the vulnerable communities. The government and global organizations have a pivotal role in supporting these initiatives. There's a clear need for both local and international support to enhance food security.
We have been using an ancient mode of doing farming. We have not gotten maybe more enlightenment, or now we can do other manageable ways of farming.
We need to harness resources. Already we have several huge dams that have been built, but also putting money in investing in small irrigation facilities, conservation of water, building of water plants would make a huge difference in terms of food production in Kenya.
Implementing sustainable farming practices and improving infrastructure to support agriculture will be key to securing food for Kenya's future. Reporting from AFC TV, I'm Santana Mwoki.
Thank you so much for that topic, Santana. And to understand this topic with gravity, I'm joined by an expert who will give us more insights in this. Please welcome and introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm James Mbaya, a food scientist. I work at Bidco Africa in the QA department.
Allow me to head straight for the question. How has climate change affected food production in Kenya?
Thank you for the question. Climate change has really affected food production in Kenya. The main reason is because most of food production in Kenya has been dependent on rain. We can see due to climate change, there have been irregular patterns of rain, making it very difficult for our farmers to plant their crops, as we have an issue with food production. The second aspect is in the same angle, there is a lot of drought, which in its unequal measure has led to a lot of crop failure, limiting our food production as a country.
And in regard to what you have mentioned, are there some challenges that farmers are facing and how do we overcome them?
Yeah, our farmers have a lot of challenge. Number one, you find that most of the farmers in this country are the old folks. The young, educated guys are looking for white-collar jobs. They are not into agriculture. So these old folks are taking a lot of time to adapt to new changes, new emerging trends in the agriculture and be able to increase productivity, and also their strength is low. So you find that the productivity of them is a little bit low compared if our young people would delve into agriculture. Number two, as I said earlier, one of the biggest challenge in this country is that most of our farmers are poor people. So affording this new technology, mechanization of the farms is not there. So the productivity of each farm and also affordability of fertilizers is low. So productivity is low, hampering our food production as a country.
My final question, what policy changes are needed to improve Kenya's food security and support vulnerable communities?
As a nation, we don't really lack in policy because there are a lot of policies that have been enacted by Parliament. For example, like the Food Security Bill 2014, there is the National Food and Nutrition Implementation Framework. So everything is there. The only problem is the goodwill to implement all that has been enacted. And so if we can be able to fully implement the laws that have already been enacted, it will really help in securing the food of this nation. A very simple and quick example would be there was plans to employ more agricultural extension officers by the government, and these extension officers would be doing education to the farmers and be able to teach them new and efficient ways of food production. But up to the moment, that implementation of that has not been done. So you can see that the problem is not the laws, the problem is the goodwill to enact these laws.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbaya, for accepting to shed light on this. Our next segment focuses on the urgent issue of job creation for Kenyan youths. A critical challenge as nearly 60% of the population is under 25. With the youth population rapidly growing, the question arises, how can Kenya provide meaningful employment opportunities that harness this potential and drive economic growth? Let's explore what's being covered.
Definitely, we all know, having listened to the different manifestos, if there's one thing that they're pitching, it has to do with the economy. And when it comes to the young people, it has to do with job creation. This is not something new. It's something that has been spoken over and over again.
In Kenya, youth unemployment rate remains high, hovering around 23%, and the situation is further complicated by the fact that nearly 70% of young people work in the informal sector, where job security and benefits are limited. Despite numerous government and organizational initiatives, many youth still struggle to find meaningful, secure work.
According to me, I have seen a lot of people who have excellent jobs out here in Kenya and they do not have any documents with them, whereas those who have documents and have learned are just at home. So I do not think the system is of any help.
The focus is now shifting to sustainable job creation, jobs that not only support livelihoods but also contribute to the long-term health of the economy.
78% of the young people in this country are actually found in the rural areas, which means that that's the environment within which job creation should be created for them. Otherwise, it would mean that they would have to now go to the urban centers to look for work. Agriculture, in particular, makes up 33% of the GDP in this country, which means that our investment, our focus, the revenue that we generate in this country, 33% of it comes from agriculture. So in a bid for the politicians to create jobs for the young people, how many of them have actually considered agriculture as an area for these young people to get involved in?
Policymakers are increasingly advocating for the investments in green technologies, vocational training and entrepreneurship support.
I studied civil engineering at the University of Nairobi. I grew up here farming, so my primary school days were spent here before I went to boarding school. Then I moved to Nairobi for high school, university and work. And during those times, we were still doing like kidogo family farming and things like that. But after 5 years working in the city, I was looking for a change. Initially, I was coming to do it as a side hustle a bit before I go back to school, but then it picked up really well during COVID, and we expanded, and now I do it full time.
By empowering the youth with skills for emerging sectors such as renewable energy, digital technology and agriculture, Kenya can unlock new opportunities for economic growth.
Just like we've done in renewable energy, just like we've done in the mobile financing sector, we can do a lot more with that if we begin to encourage our young people to think solutions and to think innovation within their spaces. To the young people in this country, don't wait for anyone to make room for you. You are actually gifted by God to think outside the box. You can come up with solutions if you put your mind to it.
The way forward is clear. Sustainable job creation must be prioritized, not only to help our youth find meaningful work, but also ensure Kenya's economic future is both prosperous and green. Sophie Kinya, reporting for Nafsi TV.
Thank you for that report, Sophie. I'm joined by an analyst who will expound on this issue. Welcome very much. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Pamela Martin and I'm a youth activist.
Welcome again. To begin with, why is it that the youth unemployment is high in Kenya, and what are the barriers to stable jobs?
There are many reasons why, many causes for the youth unemployment in Kenya. Number one is the high population growth rate that does not match the number of opportunities or job opportunities that are available for our youth. Number two is the mismatch of skills, whereby you find out that the skills that most of our youth have been trained for are not needed in the market. And also there is a factor of a lack of experience, whereby you find that many employers want experienced people to employ, yet our youth have not been given the opportunity to get the experience.
Thank you for that. So what can the government do to increase job opportunities for the youth?
Thank you for that wonderful question. Number one, the government can avail policies that are tax favorable in order to attract many investors, because you find out that many investors shy away from investing in Kenya because of the high tax rates that are there. And also the other thing that government can do is allocating specific job opportunities for the youth in the government, such that, for example, if there are openings, there's a specific number that of employees needed that has been set apart for the youth.
And how can the nation support youth entrepreneurship with better financing, mentorship, and market access?
In terms of financing, the government can avail tailor-made loans that target SMEs that are led by the youth. And the other thing is that the government can organize seminars and expos for the youth in order to train them on entrepreneurial management.
What are your thoughts on green technologies being used to create sustainable jobs for the youth?
Kenya can invest in green tech by offering grants and loans to youth-led enterprises that focuses on green technology, such as the renewable energy and waste management.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate having you.
Karibu sana. Thank you for having me.
We are going on a short break, but don't go away. We'll be right back.
Audio Jungle.
With all said and done, that brings us to a wrap. Remember Nelson Mandela's words, "It always seems impossible until it's done." This captures Africa's journey towards decolonization, poverty reduction, and climate change. For a deeper dive into such themes, check out The Color of Money by Taye Selassie, a gripping read that highlights how economic empowerment and cultural pride can reshape our future. And with that, I wish you a blessed night. Until we meet again, keep safe.